Yo, we're back. A little bit more cognitive behavioral therapy. We're continuing with the next part of the book. We're looking at chapter 6, Cbt and Anxiety. Anxiety is a major topic of depression, which is often quite confusing. Before I delve into what anxiety is all about, I want you to understand that cognitive behavioral therapy is probably the most effective treatment for anxiety and anxiety-related disorders. Although it is often juxtaposed as a similar term to stress and fear, anxiety is a completely different experience. Of course, fear and stress sometimes serve as the emotions behind anxiety, but this doesn't make them the same. The experience is similar, yet completely different. So, if you are the type who considers anxiety a form of stress or fear, the first step is to discard that notion. Anxiety is a primary emotion which shares similarities with fear, but is usually more prolonged and mostly irrational in nature. Anxiety is a normal emotion that we all experience occasionally. Everyone gets anxious at one point or another. However, when anxiety becomes overwhelming, persistent, and uncontrollable, it means it has gone beyond the realm of normality. Excessive anxiety cripples you to an unsettling point, where you can no longer function optimally. When anxiety starts interfering with your normal functions, you may have an anxiety-related disorder on hand. Like all fear-based disorders, anxiety disorder stems from the mind and the negative thoughts it sometimes produces. Anxiety disorders affect the majority of the population in the United States. In fact, it is the most common mental disorder in the country. One thing you should know is that anxiety doesn't become a disorder unless it's been affecting you for a while and is affecting your functioning in one way or another. Anxiety disorders are mostly treated with cognitive behavioral therapies such as exposure and response therapy, cognitive restructuring, and mindfulness-centered therapies like deep belly breathing and progressive muscle relaxation. Before I go deep into the CBT techniques used in the environment of anxiety disorders, I'll first go into how anxiety works, the factors that cause anxiety, and anxiety as a disorder. The biggest challenge anyone faces in a bid to treat anxiety is not understanding what anxiety really is. How do you treat something if you don't even know what exactly that thing is? There is a distinct difference between fear and anxiety that many people are unable to understand. Also, there is a difference between anxiety and worry, but most people just interchange the terms for each other. If you are unable to understand what anxiety is, it is almost impossible to figure out where the anxiety is coming from or what you can do about it. To really understand anxiety in psychology, we must talk about it in terms of 3 levels of experience: cognitive, emotional, and physical experience. In fact, you must do this to understand any psychological concept. Cognitive experiences, as you already know, refer to anything relating to thought. Think about that voice that is always in your head, speaking to nobody else but you. Physical or psychological experiences are the bodily sensations you experience. For example, the racing of your heart. Emotional experiences are a blend of cognitive and psychological experiences. You experience emotions after you have cognitively interpreted something, and then these feelings provide the psychological responses. For instance, when you interpret something to be dangerous, you get scared, and then your heart starts racing in fear. So anxiety is a cognitive experience when you get anxious inside your head. It is a physical experience when you feel your heart thumping because of a threat, and an emotional experience when it makes you behave irrationally. The first cause of anxiety I want to talk about is stress. Often we talk about stress and anxiety together because they are related terms. Certain stresses serve as the basis of anxious feelings. What are stresses? Stresses are anything in your environment that you perceive to be especially challenging or threatening. A typical stressor is an upcoming job interview. Stress is how the body responds to stresses physiologically. It involves the release of adrenaline in the brain and the enabling of the body's fight or flight response. Increased heart rate, quickened breathing, tensed muscles, and higher blood pressure are some of the physiological responses your body gives when the fight or flight response is activated. These are all products of your brain trying to prepare you for a perceived threat, so you can either fight or flee from the threat. On the other hand, fear is a primary emotion, your body's response to perceived danger. Fear is usually based in the present, is short-lived, and based on a valid perception of actual danger. It usually subsides as soon as you see that there is no danger at all. Anxiety, like fear, is an emotion that you experience when you perceive a threat or danger. Although fear is usually the body's way of responding to an actual threat, while anxiety is a response to the non-existent and unrealistic threat. Anxiety is your body's way of responding to imagined danger or something that will happen only in the future, if at all. It often increases in intensity and frequency while affecting normal functioning. For instance, let's say you watch a movie about a serial killer who sneaks into people's houses to attack them, and it terrified you to the point that you started staying in hotels instead of your house, imagining that the serial killer could come into your home. You start to spend a lot of your time devising tips to help you avoid the serial killer. That is anxiety. It is impossible to pointedly say what the cause of anxiety is. According to experts, anxiety can be caused by a combination of more than one factor, some of which are environmental and genetic. But there are triggers that cause symptoms of anxiety in individuals and even worsen them. Anxiety triggers vary among people, but there are common triggers which affect most people with anxiety-related conditions. You can have more than one trigger for anxiety, but anxiety attacks sometimes happen with no trigger at all. Environmental triggers. Certain things in the environment can cause anxiety to worsen the symptoms. Most environmental triggers usually have to do with stress. They include school, relationship, job, and financial insecurity. All of these can greatly contribute to anxiety symptoms in a person. Genetics. If you have someone in the family with anxiety problems, then you are very likely to have an anxiety disorder too. Medical factor. Certain medical conditions, such as heart disease, can cause symptoms of anxiety. Some medications also have side effects that trigger anxiety disorders in people. Substance use or withdrawal. Research has shown a strong link between alcohol and anxiety. Abuse of alcohol or other substances can cause anxiety. Also, withdrawal from substance, Also, withdrawal from substance use can also cause anxiety. Of course, it'd be incomplete to talk about anxiety without negative thoughts. Negative thinking is a major trigger for anxiety and anxiety-related disorders. Plenty of other things exist that can contribute to anxiety, but I want to talk more about anxiety and negative thinking. Negative thinking patterns cause and sometimes aggravate anxiety. According to cognitive theories, thoughts and beliefs determine how we perceive the world. Therefore, negative thoughts grounded in pessimism can have a great effect on your mental health. These negative beliefs and perceptions are common in all anxiety and mood-related disorders. Negative thinking patterns surface under certain circumstances, usually circumstances pertaining to stress. When they surface, they reinforce self-limiting beliefs, which already make up your cognitive process. When a negative thought comes to the surface of your mind, it results in feelings of anxiety because you believe it to be true. So anxiety is a result of self-defeating beliefs and certain thoughts. Sometimes the thoughts you have shouldn't even cause anxiety, but because they are tied into your beliefs, they often cause anxious feelings. The process of CBT for anxiety. When you go for cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety, the first thing your therapist will do is give you a psychoeducation on anxiety and everything related to it, in order to let you know what you are up against. Psychoeducation is important because it lets you understand that you are not alone and that other people before you have been able to successfully treat anxiety with helpful CBT strategies. Sometimes CBT sessions are conducted with family members and loved ones present so that they can understand your problem. For many people, simply understanding their problem is the first step to full recovery. Let's say you suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. The first thing you would need to learn about would be the OCD. Your CBT therapist will be able to give you helpful information, specifically about your anxiety, not minding whether you already know about it from online resources beforehand. Psychoeducation is a crucial first step, but it is just a part of the whole treatment. Realistic thinking is one of the CBT interventions for anxiety. It is the ability to effectively manage negative emotions by identifying negative thinking and replacing it with logical, balanced, and realistic thinking. Since our thoughts have such a big impact on how we feel, changing unhelpful thoughts to realistic thoughts is the first thing you will work on with your therapist. Realistic thinking may be regarded as the ability to view yourself, other people, and the world as a whole from a balanced perspective, without tilting too much on the negative or the positive. To start thinking realistically, start paying attention to what you think about and say to yourself. Often we pay no mind to what we tell ourselves, even though we are always being affected by these thoughts. Knowing your thoughts helps you keep track of the thoughts that play out in your mind. Your therapist will further help you to understand how to filter your thoughts, so you can know the problematic ones that need to be addressed and possibly replaced. The only thing that determines whether a thought is realistic is the context and circumstances surrounding the production of that thought. No matter how minor it is, always notice the shift in your emotion, whenever you have a particular thought. Once you have learned how to effectively recognize unbalanced thinking, your therapist will then work with you to replace that particular thought with a balanced and realistic one. This diminishes stress. In addition to replacing negative thoughts with more realistic ones, you will also learn easy to remember positive affirmations that reinforce the realistic thoughts. Your CBT sessions will include homework so you can further work on your problem when you are by yourself. Exposing and response prevention is another CBT practice, which is used to help anxiety sufferers confront their fears. Usually, people try to avoid the things they are scared of in order to get rid of anxiety, but this only works in the short term. Let's go back to the example of the serial killer movie, and you avoiding your house out of fear of being attacked by the serial killer. If you are unable to get over your fear of staying in your house, then ERP is a procedure your therapist is likely to take you through. Avoidance worsens anxiety in the long term because it makes you unable to see that the thing you are scared of isn't really a danger to you. In a typical exposure session, your therapist will take you to your house and make you sleep over so you can learn nothing bad will happen. Exposure is the single most effective step in learning to manage anxiety through CBT intervention practices. In ERP, you are gradually and repeatedly made to confront situations that make you anxious, so you can gradually get rid of the anxiousness. CBT practices emphasize the necessity of facing your fears on a regular basis. The more you practice, the quicker you will be rid of that fear. Another important practice in CBT is the use of relaxation strategies. It is an important and helpful part of the therapy. Shallow breathing is one thing that is linked to anxiety, together with muscle tension. In therapy, you are trained to become aware of your bodily sensations using certain exercises that can help you relax. 2 exercises regularly used in CBT are deep belly breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, also referred to as diaphragmatic breathing. Deep belly breathing has to do with consciously taking deep breaths while slowing down your breathing in order to calm your mind. Progressive muscle relaxation, on the other hand, is a systematic process of tensing and relaxing muscle groups in a specific order. The more you practice these exercises, the more effective they are in treating your anxiety. Other relaxation strategies you will be introduced to in therapy include mindfulness meditation, massage, calm music, and yoga. Keep in mind that the goal of including relaxation strategies in your therapy isn't to avoid or get rid of anxiety. Rather, it is aimed at making your exposure process easier so you can easily eliminate the feelings. So that's the end of chapter 6. We'll come back next time for chapter 7, Cbt and Depression. So we're going to spend a bit of time looking at depression, social media, and anxiety. Chapter 8 talks about addiction, and 9 is how it works. So next episode, we're looking at cognitive behavioral therapy and depression. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.